Hey, good afternoon guys. My name is Yesinia COF, and today I'm going to be talking about illegal immigration in the United States. And my claim for today will be that illegal immigration has a positive impact on the United States. Okay, so undocumented immigrants actually benefit our economy. According to the data collected from the 2000 and 2010 U.S. Census, the population of undocumented immigrants has moved accordingly to our economic status, our economical situation in the country. So when we had the recession in 2008, the population of undocumented immigrants dropped from 11.6 million to 10.8 million people in 2009. As the economy began to recover, the population began to increase back to 11.6 million in 2010, and as we continue to have a better economy, the population of undocumented people continued to increase all the way to 12.1 million in 2014. And then, also according to the U.S. Department of Labor in 2017, there were 27.4 million there was 27.4 million foreign-born persons in the U.S. labor force, which makes up 17.1% of the whole labor force of the country. Although I did try to look for the information that stated what percentage of the 17.1 were undocumented. Unfortunately, it was not provided by the U.S. Department of Labor force. And then the role of the unauthorized worker in the U.S. has and continues to have a positive impact on the country. Many illegal immigrants take on hard labor jobs that many lawful U.S. citizens don't normally take on. The top three that I found were harvesting, such as agriculture, framing, and construction. In the article of California's Undocumented Workers Help the Economy Grow But May Cost by Valerie Hamilton, 95% of California's harvest workers are illegal immigrants. And according to the article of Occupations of Unauthorized Workers by Jeffrey S. Pazel and Debera Khan, framing is outnumbered by 3% of undocumented workers and construction by 6% of undocumented workers. And out of the three jobs, the agriculture has the biggest and most important impact in the country, especially in California, since California is responsible for about 2/3 of our country's produce. And as stated in Hamilton's article of California's Undocumented Workers Help the Economy Grow But May Cost, nearly 36,000 undocumented workers work daily to harvest California's produce, and they are the only ones that take on the low wages, as low as $12 per hour starting. And in Ventura County Farm has advertised widely for the U.S. born workers to take on those jobs, but also stated in Hamilton's article, very few of them have actually applied, and out of the few that have applied, hardly any have stayed. And those are the ones that compose the other 5% of the 100% that work in agriculture. And also, the way that undocumented immigrants continue to have an impact on our country. In 2015, Mark Warner, the businessman and U.S. Virginia Senator, mentioned that 34% of the workforce today is composed of the baby boomers, who are now starting to retire. And it is predicted that within the next decade, 75% of our country's workforce will be composed of the millennials. And from the millennials, many of those are composed of both undocumented people and also the children of undocumented people who migrated here between the 1970s to the early 2000s. And as I mentioned, the undocumented people of our country have an important impact. Sorry.
Right, the proposition is very clearly identified, so you're in good shape there. There's no preview of what the contents are going to be, so we have to be listening carefully as you go through those issues. I think you want to set that up for us a little bit more with a roadmap. The subject is controversial. You are focusing on illegal workers instead of those who are merely foreign-born. You do mention the foreign-born at one point, and then you have an explanation about how that fits into your statistics, and I think that that's an important distinction to be made. In the body of the speech, although there was not a preview, I could tell that there was a division. You're saying there's a benefit to the economy. It has a positive effect on the country, although the difference between the benefit to the economy and the positive effect on the country, I'm not sure that that's very clear. It still seems like it's an economic effect that you're talking about here. There may be businesses that couldn't succeed or couldn't remain open without the assistance of employees who are not documented workers. I think that's maybe the way that argument ought to be phrased. Your third point has something to do with retirement of a large part of the population, but there's not a very clear explanation as to how it is connected to the point that you're talking about here. I can see that there are possible ways that they are linked, but you're the one who needs to make that argument for us, and so that really feels very incomplete, and I think it's a little bit problematic that you sort of end abruptly, and you know that you've got an awkward spot there, so I don't need to point that out, I'm sorry, but it just feels like that whole third point, you had an idea, but you're not sure where the idea was going and what the point was. So that gets to be a little bit problematic. On the information, you've got a lot of extensive statistical information that you cite. You usually give sources on most of those points, so I appreciated that. You could probably use a little bit more expert testimony. You have one example about the farms in Ventura that are unable to get employees who are legal residents to work for the prices that are being offered or the wages that are being offered, so I thought that that was pretty effective. I'm not exactly sure how complicated it is to do this piece of math. You mentioned that 27 million of the population, of the working population, are foreign-born, which represent 17% of the labor force. Well, why don't you just subtract the 12 million that you said are undocumented workers here from the 27 million? That would give us the remaining 15 million who are foreign-born legal workers, and the 12.4 million that are not legal workers. That seems like that is not that confusing, and you seem to be apologizing for not having the number. I thought you just gave the number, so I'm not exactly sure how that works. Now, some of the statistics that you present are a little unclear, like you had this 3% and 6% when it came to framing and the other work that was being done there, and I'm not sure if that was the total number of employees or they represented a percentage over the total number of employees. That was a little unclear what the statistic meant, but like I said, you did have a lot of statistical information there. I thought that you were doing a reasonable job presenting up until the end, you know, when you just like you tripped over something. I'm not sure, an idea, or maybe you just had one of those, you know, brain freezes, and you go, there you go, you know. So, but otherwise, I thought you were doing fine. All right, thank you.